Talk about being out of sorts. All right, but I'm here to get back in sort with all of you. I guess this is a better welcome anyway. So those of you who are just joining us, I'm Renee Baribeau, the Practical Shaman, and I have to tell you this very funny story. I studied with this, well, I half studied with this Vedic Swami. They kind of picked me out of the crowd, and at the time I was suffering from severe heartbreak. And one of the Dikshas that I did over the course of those times was to have access to the Divine Mother. And they're talking about like a real face-to-face. And I thought to myself, like, well, I'm not going to get that. I didn't get the Dattatreya. I didn't get any of these. And then about a couple of weeks ago, my dear friend sent me a picture of the Virgin Wind Mother from a temple in Peru. And I think she's on the call, so I just want to say thank you. And so then that day I went to look up the Virgin Wind Mother, and what the message that I got from the reading that I did was that you will know me, the Divine Mother, I will come on the wind. And so it was like, if you ever need some inspiration about why you're doing the things you're doing, why you're working the second job, or why, let's see if I can get rid of this view because it's very distractive. Let's see, how do I do that? Well, I can't do it, but if you're making a lot of distractions, I don't know, would you stop? Because I'm seeing them all right here. I don't know how to change this, but it's hard to focus. Let me see if I pin my video. There. All right, I'm pinning my video. Hopefully this will help. Distractions. Let's talk about distractions. That's what these wind knots are for. And we're really in a kind of a precarious spot right now. Our world turned upside down this year. And for those of us who have been studying prophecy and studying with the elders, we've known that something was coming. I don't know that any of us thought it looked like this, although last year I got this beautiful science fiction movie that I started to write, and it was called Who Stole the Wind? And I kept seeing this image of everybody being locked down. They could only go outside for a few minutes, and then they'd have to come back in. But then during this process, everyone got more in line to the nature right around them. And I, just in my own creative sense, I put this out 40 years. I had no idea that I was just having a vision of what was going to happen for us this year. And I still think that my science fiction movie would be a Hollywood blockbuster when we get back to making movies. And the wind continues to surprise me. And now when I get greedy and selfish and think that I didn't get my miracle from the Swami who's now taken his Mahasamadhi, I realized that I got the Diksha with the Divine Mother when I was given the gift of writing Winds of Spirit. Winds of Spirit, if you don't have it, it's a wonderful book because you can go to the back every single day and open up and get some wind guidance for your life. That's not to say I think you should be calling in a new wind every day, because when you do, your life starts to get very windy. But I have to say something very funny, because I'm a doubting Thomas. For those of you who know me, I went kicking and screaming to shamanism. People were banging on my door for healings, and I'm there like, why are you coming to see me? And they said, well, somebody told me you're a shaman, and I'm there like, well, I don't know why they told you that. And so lo and behold, people would show up at the door for healings, and I had made this pact with Spirit that when somebody came for a healing, if possible, that I would tend to this. And so today, I went outside to get grounded, and I called in a wind for this experience. And the wind that I called was Ehuga Emise, the creek wind of protection. And it's about moving forward with confidence. Let's see. So about moving forward with confidence. And so what I want to say about these wind knots, the wind knot we're going to tie today, it's all about moving forward. And it's all about moving forward with confidence when you're ready. I'm not telling you to go out after we tie this wind knot and release it this weekend, next week, the week after. You get to do this experience any way you want, unless it really starts to hold you up and you start to really suffer. Then I would say unleash the wind and let it do what you can't do for yourself. So the wind we're going to be working with today is the creek wind, Ehuta MSA. All right? And what I decided when I thought about doing the wind knot, I thought to myself, well, I could teach people how to tie 3 wind knots, but they're not going to get the value that if they spend a whole day with me really doing 3 or 4 practices and then tying powerful knots together. So I've talked to at least one of my assistants is on board, but on June 20th, we're going to do an all-day class, which will be the first time we do this, and it will be a hybrid class. So there will be time that I'll be talking. There'll be time that we're going to break you into smaller groups, and this is why the assistants are important. And then there'll be time when after lunch that you're actually going to go out and spend some time working with those knots and tying them so that you can then, there, maybe the next row won't be quite so moving about, so that you can actually go outside and practice this, come back together, we talk about the practices, and then we will move on from there with a closing ceremony and things like that. And I'm really excited about it. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to offer it at a really great offer for you today to do this with me. And you don't have to. This could be just enough for you. Hey, I tried this winds experience out, and I'm going to try 1 knot, and then you can release that knot, and then maybe you'll see. So let me just tell you right now, there is Bridget's in the house watching the chat, and I think Terry's over here watching the chat too. I don't know if Carrie's here or not, but if you have questions about the work, they're in the chat and they can help you, or anyone else who's completed the Wind Mastery program. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about this perfect storm that we've entered, because no matter what your opinions are about the coronavirus, it was the time for the perfect storm with nature. And that's when all things line up so that the storm unfurls itself in a way that you really can't neglect. And so no matter what your viewpoints are about how this started, where this started, what you need to do now, or whatever, just know we are nature, and nature cooperated perfectly with it. So no matter where you were coming from, what you were sourcing from, nature absolutely cooperated to put us on a shutdown, which we've done. And so the skies have cleared. Nature's having her moment when we're all sitting at home taking a beautiful wind breath for herself. And so today we are going to work with this nature, this wind nature, and we're going to tie a knot. So hopefully you've got a piece of string or a rope. Some of you have rope. I have different kinds. I happen to like this blue stuff. But whatever, that you have a piece of rope, that you have some willingness, and that you're open to hearing a little bit about the wind. We're going to actually do a threshold journey to learn what wind we're facing as we get ready to move forward. And I say as we get ready to move forward because some people are more ready to move forward than others, and it's your right to do it however you want, as respectfully as you want, and hopefully that we do it in a way that we're more in cooperation with nature when we get through with this than we were before we started. And then after we do this threshold journey, which I'm going to explain, you'll be well aware of where we're going when we get there. We're going to tie a powered wind knot. And that's what we're going to actually take what we've learned from there, because we don't all need the same experience to move forward. We're going to actually tie it into a knot. And then you can untie that knot when you're ready. Not when I'm ready. I was out there thinking to myself, like, oh, I know what I'm putting in this knot. And it might change by the time we do our ceremony. But I was thinking to myself, and I'm going to untie it today. And I'm thinking, like, are you really ready for what happens when you untie it today? One time in the class, we'll be tying 3 wind knots. And in the wind knots, there's the first wind knot is well, let me hop in right into the history so you'll understand about the 3 knots. So when the Lap sailors used to go out to sea, they would go visit the wind witches before they would go. And the wind witches would tie knots. And these knots were powerful charms so that when the sailors were out at sea and they were in becalmed waters, that they could untie a knot. And the first knot would be nice, steady sail, which is what we're going to tie today. Then if they needed a little more oomph to get home, they would untie that second wind knot. And then if they needed, all things to break loose, they would untie that third one. And there's other stories and other charms that they've had through sailing mythology throughout forever about how sailors used magic to get the wind when the wind wasn't blowing. And this goes under this philosophy. The basis of the work that I teach is that about 12,500 years ago, when we moved from outside to inside, we became separated from our nature. And it wasn't an overnight process. It was a slow process, 12,500 years. I guess that's a blip of time when you're talking about 4 billion years. But over these last time, we moved inside. We built doors and we built windows. So we thought we were in charge of nature. Look, we could keep it outside. We could keep it at bay. And so a lot of these wind practices have been lost throughout time. And when I first started writing this book, trust me, I thought I was writing a book that my mother would read, because I wrote this book called The Shaman Chef, How Cooking Saved My Life, which was a story between me and my abusive father that even 30 years dead, everyone was protecting. And, I said, well, give me a book that my mother would read. And what I started to write was, Is Your Compass Pointing True North? And I didn't even really know what a compass was. And in my research, I got all the way back and so isn't this interesting? Wind's a metaphor here, wind's a metaphor there. Sherlock Holmes talks about the wind. The Bible has 25 instances of the wind, more about the east wind than the west wind. And I just kept going. And then all of a sudden I found all of these wind gods and goddesses. But the wind goddesses revealed themselves more towards the end. And I really think that this idea of that there was a virgin wind mother, and that Mari, the Basque wind goddess, and Vegemite and Oya, they're all many faces of the divine mother, the divine wind, which we started to separate back right around about the time of the tablets. The 4 winds as marker points have been here with us as persistent markers of how we organized our consensual reality since it was first written down. And there's on the caves, you can see examples of it as well. So what happened at that 12,500 year period is not only did we become disconnected from nature, we became disconnected from our magic. All of a sudden, witches became evil things, and all of these ideas that being magical human beings wasn't the ideal way to go, because all of a sudden now we've gone inside, we're praying in these church pews, and we needed the intermediary at the front of the room to tell us how we were experiencing spirit. And I know it's true, because even this morning when I pulled Ehud Ka MSA out of the wind things, I had to laugh at myself. Well, I mean, if I was really, truly always aligned to my magic, I would have known that we needed this wind, this creek wind, the wind of protection as you move forward for today. But instead I have to reach in and get surprised and not so surprised every single time. If you don't have the Wind Spirit cards, I gave everybody a link in the email this morning to download a set, because you might want to redo this practice later and pull a wind that you want, especially to empower your way forward. But for the group process, we are going to use this wind of protection. So no, we are protected as we move forward. I mean, that is, to me, is just a beautiful thing. So I can't go all into the history of this, but what I did think that I would start with is reading you a little bit from Macbeth, because in Macbeth, he talks about the wind witches. I give thee a wind, thou art kind, and I another. I myself have all the other, and the very ports they blow, all the quarters that they know, I the shipman's card. So, you know, it was very, very much connected to there. And so we're relearning our magic. And this is the first step in relearning magic, is to really embrace the fact that you are nature. There's no nature out there. There's no virus out there. There is nothing out there other than what you're putting on there. So all of us are this virus, all of us are the skies that are clearing up, and all of us are the trees. And once you come from that place, it just is a matter of a short jump before you really know that you have access to your magic, your magical powers. And so, is there anyone in this room that doesn't believe that you have access to your magical powers? Well, I don't know. I don't think I have the hand raising thing going, but Bridget, you can let me know. All right. So everything in nature, now you're all with me, we're all nature. Everything in nature has a cycle. And so what the shamans were talking about in like 2011, 2012 was the end of the Mayan calendar. What they really meant was that we were at the end of a great cycle. Now, so there's great cycles, there's yearly cycles, there's daily cycles, you know, you have moment-to-moment cycles. And how we learn to navigate based in our own, that we're at the center pin of our own compass, is to understand where we are at all times in our own cycle. And so that's what the wind work is about learning to understand where you are in your own cycle at any time, so that then you can pivot. So today we're going to look at the cycles of first the COVID, and then your current situational cycle and what that might mean. Then we will journey we're going to journey to find out which wind we're facing in our own cycle, so that then we're going to empower a knot that's going to move us from, you know, 90 degrees clockwise on our cycle to the next place. Because it's very rare that we can jump from, you know, 100 or 360 degrees around the cycle without stopping at each place. And how long you spend at a place, it all depends on a number of factors. When I was researching the book, I landed upon the Greek winds. And later I learned that I landed upon the Greek winds was because that's when we started to really explain how things were relational. Like, you know, Aristotle actually put on his compass card the places of no wind. Now, were they as accurate as we have today with satellites and stuff like that? But if you live close to the equator, there's a couple of spots where the wind doesn't blow. And it has to do with how airflow moves and things like that. But in your life, there's times when the wind doesn't move either. And, you know, we like to think of those times as stagnation, but sometimes, and they can be caused by a death or a loss, but sometimes they're caused by, you've finished one cycle and then there's a gap before you start the next cycle. Now, what I believe with this gap that we're in at the end of this great cycle, I believe it's going to be another 250 to 300 years before we enter fully into this next cycle that, that some people are praying for to be oneness. I don't think we could go from where we are here to where we're going with oneness, especially, you know, even now with all of the separation. And now we're fighting over who's wearing a mask and who's not wearing a mask. After we just had this beautiful thing about coming together, now we're still in judgment of how other people are choosing to come out. And trust me, my friends have made me enough masks that I'm outfitted for the summer, and I wear mask out of respect for other people. And I get to come out the way that I want to come out. I might be more comfortable having a couple people over for dinner this weekend, and you're not. And what I want to say is, it's all okay. It's all okay. I may be ready to untie my wind knot next week, and you might be ready in another month. So trust the process, please. So the cardinal directions in the Greek mythology was, notice, Eurus is in the east, Zephyrus is in the south, backtrack. Eurus is in the east, Notus is in the south, Zephyrus is in the west, and Boreas is in the north. And the east has always been, in all of the tribes and things, about new beginnings. And if you think of a nor'easter, it will come up the eastern seaboard and clean out everything in its wake, everything that's not working. And this is kind of what this coronavirus did, is it cleared out all of the debris. It took the chemtrails out of the sky. It took the planes out of the sky. And it absolutely cleared the smog out of LA. That's like an east wind blowing where everything gets devastated, everything gets leveled, and then all of a sudden we're liking the clearing of the earth. We're liking this a lot, most of us, and I would hope that everybody on this call is loving it a lot. Then we go around, and in the growing season and in the awakening compass, we move to the south, which this is where there's some discrepancy between a lot of clans and tribes and indigenous people. But in the south, for this work, I've placed the emotions, your needs and desires. So all of a sudden, here we get to the south wind, and we want to look at, like, what do I need? What do I desire? Are my needs being met? How do I like being shut down and told to stay home? All of these things surfaced our emotional wounding, our emotional joy for people who hadn't been able to be home with their children, and they're finding that experience. And, you know, so there's a lot of different experiences we have. But remember, as this COVID's going around, it emotionally affected us. There was a haze, a maze, there was a low-lying density that was over my emotional body, and I believe that I saw it everywhere I looked. We didn't know. We were scared. We had no idea what was going to be next. And then in the West, you know, what physical changes? We stayed home. We made more time for our families. You know, we did a lot of different things that we hadn't been able to do. Some of us worked twice as hard, you know, because all those people who were laid off, there was other people who had to work twice as hard, that including me, than before. So the experience of this wasn't the same for all of you. And then now, as we're getting ready to move forward, the COVID is asking us, because remember, we are this virus. How do we want to come out in community? How do we want to move forward spiritually? What are we going to do collectively, and how are we going to support each other as we do that? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a journey here to find out what experience that you're having. What wind are you facing? Are you facing your life right now in the East? You know, looking at what you've taken for granted, what narrative you're listening to. You know, have you gotten clear through simplifying? Maybe the long-term goals you set seem less important. But don't go in your mind to figure this out. We're going to go on a journey to figure it out, okay? But I'm just kind of giving you some things you could be looking for. You know, self-judgment. How are you judging yourself through this experience? You know, is there a new narrative coming out? No more business as usual. And how do you do when there's the impossibility of knowing what's coming next? Because this COVID has been mutating and doing lots of different things. We don't have a set pattern. My sister is in a nursing home that had everyone's infected and there was maybe one death. So we don't know how it's mutating and who it's affecting and who's going to die. You know, we're not God. Or have you been having a South experience where you're experiencing a tremendous amount of grief? You've lost your sense of safety. I know I'm a little hesitant when the guy's coming over to pull the grapefruits off the tree. Loneliness. Who's experienced loneliness and sadness? How about loss of control? Loss of innocence. I think there's a real loss of innocence going on. You know, we've never faced a global pandemic before during our lifetimes. It's happened before, but during our lifetime. So we can never be innocent to the fact that this can happen again. Disassociation and all of the positive emotions of joy, connection, laughter. I mean, I've laughed really hard. Somebody sent me a meme one day that it just made me laugh so hard that every time I forwarded it to somebody else, I was snorting again. So we've probably gone through the gamut of all of these emotions. In Zephyrus, the west wind is about more time with family, actually being in a household with people, that you have to see day in, day out. Housekeeping and cleaning. Who's cleaned out those old cabinets? Illness and death. I'm sure probably everybody on the call knows somebody who's died from this illness or some kind of complication from it. Food shortages. Who ever thought in your lifetime that you'd go to the grocery store and you'd get to pick from what was left there? That was new for me. Or that people became so greedy that they took all of the supplies. Discarding the outdated. So now we're moving around and we're asking our experience to be more broad, more all-encompassing, more compassion, more meaningful lives. I'm realigning my values. Struggling with it, but realigning them. Did you do meditation? I was so busy that finally I took a one-day meditation retreat, which gave me the idea to do this one-day retreat because it's hard to sign up for all these things. But could you give yourself a Saturday to really realign your values, realign how you're going to move forward? I hope so. How are we going to rethink our communities? It's funny, being connected through these mediums makes us closer, but makes us more separate. I live in a HOA, and I hardly ever socialize with people because they're usually socializing, around a drinking party at the, that pickleball court. But people have actually been out on the lawn with their chairs and their sprays and everything, and I've really stopped and gotten to know a few of my neighbors. That's really new. I know the people, but I met like 10 more. So, this is, and we do all of these, practices to keep the disease at bay. Like my friend who drove to this small town with her sister, so she was going to miss it. Sure enough, she got it. It's just like, you can't run from yourself. You can't run from your nature. You can do the best you can, but we can't. So what we're going to do first is let's do this journey. Let's find out what direction, what wind we're facing right now. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to light some sage and give us a little smudge here. Yeah, that was one of the great things I got to do. I actually went up the hill and picked this beautiful sage during this time. This was probably a little more towards the beginning, and then recently, again, I went up there last week. Have you been of service? That's a good North question. Have you been of service to other people? right after today, I'm going to, go see a man in his 80s and bring him a salad. Last week, I took another friend in her 80s up the hill because she needed to get out. And so, like, how are you being of service? So one of the things that I'm going to do also is I'm going to actually smudge off the rope that I'm going to use now so I don't have to do it again later, but I probably will anyway, but just in case I forget. All of you feel that sage, bring it in. Just grab it, like grab it. I'm sending it out to you. It smells really great. I wish you could smell it. I'm very excited about doing an all-day workshop. Doesn't that sound fun? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to call. First, I'm going to just call the wind, and I'm going to call in Ehuga Emase. It's a tricky one. And the creek story is very interesting because I believe that at the last ice age and when there was a comet that hit the planet, that many people survived it by going underground. I believe that they'd already been preparing, they've already built things underground. We have things underground. And so the creek wind, all of the winds are about creation stories. So in the creek wind, this particular wind of protection, when the floods subsided, people came back up from the earth into their community. So there's this pod. And so this is the wind we're talking about, is like that these people were safe, they were protected, and at the right time they came out into the new world. Same thing we're doing today. So to me, just that this is the perfect wind. So how do you call into a wind? For those of you who are going to download cards, many of you have wind whistles. I did put them on sale for today. So if you really got called that you wanted a wind whistle, I forgot how much I think I made them $66. And they come with the wind cards and stuff. So if you can feel it, so what we do is we take wind breaths in, and on the first wind breath in, you bring in the wind, and remember, we are nature, and so that we're breathing the same wind all around the world. I've gotten a lot of troubles for saying this virus has been on the wind. Well, it's everywhere. It's in the jungle. I mean, how did it get there? Yes, we've carried it, but think that there's energetics on the wind. I think it's also energetic besides for being viral and all of those other things, because I know I felt the energy of it and I was low grade for a month. And it was energetics. I couldn't get out of my own way. So on this first one, let's release that energy. We're going to actually bring in the wind and hold it in our bellies, and then we're going to send it out through our coccyx bone down into the belly of the mother, because she's been cleansing now, she can mulch it. And then on the second breath, we're going to actually call to Ehuga Emase and ask that wind of protection, that creek wind of protection, to merge with us as we make our wind knots. And then on that third wind breath, on that exhale, we are going to create a sacred bubble around this circle, which right now has 100 people sitting in it, but there's over a couple hundred people registered for this. So we're going to send it out to all the people who are listening later as well. So you'll be protected. All right? So if you have your wind whistles and you want to take them out, that's good. And for those of you who don't have a wind whistle yet, you can use this. So you can, it's like there's no right way, there's no wrong way, but there's these great tools that are being handcrafted. So if you want to stand with or sit there, it's up to you, with your legs spread, shoulder width apart, bend your knees, and really get that center low to the earth. Feel yourself on the belly of the mother. I have my fan going, so I have a little wind in here. I do it outside, but Saturday's lawn scalping day. All right, so we're going to breathe in all the way down to your base of your first chakra on this one. and hold it as long as you can. And then we're going to blow it out and blow it out into the belly of the mother. Talk about some stale wind. Sometimes when you blow it, take it in, and you're asking it to go out, it's not the first time. Now bring that second wind breath in. And this time we're going to bring in Utah MSA, the creek wind of protection. Then hold it. And as we breathe out, merge with that wind and see it carry you out over the fields. Stay empty. And on that third wind breath in, bring it in. Hold it. And on our wind breath out, we're going to connect ourselves with everybody in this sacred circle. And Ehuta Emasei is going to weave a protection around this circle. Whoops. That wind whistle is not supposed to be playing with us today because it just, Harry Carey jumped off the table after it made me cough and ran across the floor over there. That's one thing about going live. You know, talk about, having self-judgments and being perfect, and I'm like, okay, the cough drops are over in the other room. I got to go get them. And you know what? I'll just drink my water. Luckily, I brought the water. So how was that? It brought me right into my center. And, and sometimes you have to humble yourself with a coughing fit in order to get yourself rebalanced. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the wind knots themselves. So if you have winds of spirit, there's a whole chapter on how to make the wind knots. And one of the things is it's always good to go out and do these on a windy day, to get really solid knots. But I'm going to show you today, and then you can go out and you can either do it along with me now, or you could go later and do the exercise again, or you'll have the information because we're going to do that journey to find out what wind you're facing so that you know what you're putting into your knot. But you have a a rope. I like the ones that aren't plastic coated better, you know, because they just feel a little, you know, the man-made or something. And you get your intention, which we're going to do in a minute. And then if the wind's blowing, you let the wind blow in there. But one of the things that that I learned in Peru is that they used to blow into the quintus, which were layered cocoa leaves, and they would kiss spirit. So using your breath works. You can use your wind whistle, that works. Or I know some of the Wind Clan members have gone out during a windstorm, like Texas tornadoes, and gotten really good, you know, hurricane gale winds to put into these. And one time she surprised herself when they opened themselves in her mesa that she carries. Because if sometimes we hold on to these wind knots too long, they'll open themselves if you don't open them for you. And so what you do is, how they used to work was that they would put you do this privately, because anything that's sacred, we've lost some of our sacred. So sacred is, I have my back to you. I don't want what you're blowing into your wind knot to be in my wind knot. And so I kind of want to work protected. So I go find myself a nice place to sit on a rock. I like to go up the mountain over here and go out on a nice windy day. And, you know, I really want to be clear, like, you know, you make them force something. So like we did them in the Windwork Basic, no, I think it was one of the Wind Alchemy class, we made wind knots. And, you know, you make them for something, and then you untie them as you need the power. And like I said, sometimes they'll untie themselves. So what you do is, so you get really clear on your intention, which we're going to do in the journey we're about ready to do. And then, so you take, and especially if you're making more. Now I'm telling you, I'm going to do an all-day workshop to make a series of 3. It's not as important on this one, but I'm going to show you just in case some people say, I don't need a workshop. I'm going to go do them myself, which is fine. You dip the one side in in candle wax, or tie a string around it or something, because if you want to know where that third knot is. So one time I had made 3 wind knots, and I got to the third knot, and I'm there like, I'm ready. I've been complaining about doing too much, and one of my friends said, well, why don't you let go of this one Facebook? I was doing somebody's marketing, their backyard garage sale Facebook group, and I'm there like, yeah, I should really let that go. Well, I untied the third knot, and sure enough, within 24 hours, the woman who started the group, who I was running the group for, wanted the group back. And because she couldn't just take it back, there was this whole blow up and a whole fight about the group. And it all ended, like, we've made up since, but it all ended, this thing blew up, because it doesn't necessarily always, when you untie that third knot, it may not go the way you like. So that's why I thought on a beginner's class here today, we would tie 1 knot. Because 1 knot will be that smooth sailing knot. So remember, when the sailors would tie the first knot, it would be about nice smooth sailing. The second knot would be when you needed a little extra wind power to get home. And the third knot, all hell would break loose. Now, in the shamanic practice that I took, they had this other thing where we actually disassembled and tossed our mesas up into the ethers. And the same thing kind of happened, where within 2 or 3 weeks, I lost, maybe a week, I lost my day job. You know what I mean? So when you do these things, you have to remember, we are magical beings having this experience with nature on this planet. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you on a journey to find out which direction you're facing right now, which was Eurus of the east, Notus of the south, Zephyrus of the west, and Boreas of the north. So which wind are you facing right now? And so then we're going to tie Ehuta Emase into this knot that we're going to make. And if you have your knots, and when you're ready to move from wherever that positioning you are to the next, the next part on the cycle. So if you're sitting in the east and you're ready to move into, like, I'm ready to start that new beginnings now, I'm ready to move forward. Or if you're like, okay, I've had enough of this fear, this grief, I'm ready to move forward. Or if I've, been physically at home social distancing and I'm ready to go outside, I'm ready to go visit some people, then you would untie it. If you want to know how the community is going to support you for those people who pray more globally, then you might want to untie that. Am I clear? Clear over there? All right. So I'm going to journey with the rattle. And this is going to be a short journey. Close your eyes. And I'm going to walk you through a little guided meditation. And if you're in a comfortable spot, and if you're still at home, this is okay. Stay in your house if that's more comfortable. For those of you who are ready to go outside in your yard, imagine yourself sitting outside in your yard or somewhere you feel safe in nature. And feel those connected wind breaths in and out. And remember, we're working with the wind of protection, Ehuta Emase. And think about this time that you just spent, the last 2 months, and scan your body, starting with your feet. See if there's any blocks in your body. Where are you holding energy? And feel the breeze of Ehuta Emase come through. And it's just taking away those energies, those blocked, stuck energy in your body. And when you're ready, stand up and start walking in the direction that feels most comfortable to you. And as you're walking, notice the signposts. There might be a sign right in front of you. It might be where the sun is, where the ocean is. And just ask yourself right now, am I traveling east? Am I facing south, west, or north? And trust that the first thing that comes into your mind is correct, perfect for this moment. There is no right or wrong. And for those of you who are heading and facing east, ask, what thought am I holding on to right now? What do I believe? What am I ready to begin? And those facing south, how do I feel? Am I afraid? Am I happy? Am I lonely? Or am I full? Just notice. Those of you who are traveling west, facing the west sun, the setting sun. Physically, how do I feel? What am I leaving behind? What have I harvested from this experience? And those facing Boreas, the cold north wind, what have I planted into the cold earth? What seeds are going to grow when conditions are right? Where is my community? Has it changed? What is being supported? What's not being supported? Then we're going to come back to the room. And you might want to just note it down, so if you're going to make your wind knots late, your wind knot later, or your wind knots. And I seem to be traveling north today. Now, you could do this again tomorrow, and you might be traveling somewhere else. But this is like, we asked for this COVID experience, like, where am I sitting in this experience? And so, you know, I'm going to tie a knot about realigning my values. So how, you know, when I need that oomph of energy to make sure that my values are aligned to the work that I do, the community that I'm creating, and how I'm living in harmony with nature, that's what I'm tying a knot for. Now I'm showing you, so I'm going to do it so you all can see, because I'll probably repeat this later for myself, but this is just a demonstration. And so I'm going to kiss the wind. I'm going to kiss spirit. And I'm going to say that I'm going to say, come here for protection as I realign my values, so that I know that as I move forward, that I can move forward feeling that that the wind has my back, which the wind always has my back, but you know, I have to own it over and over and over again. So then I'm going to, since I'm inside, I'm going to and I'm going to do an overhand knot and tie it into this. And then I'm going to actually take this knot that I've just created, and I'm going to put it somewhere that's sacred for me. I'm going to put it on my altar, not on the floor with the whistle over there that ran away, but onto my altar. And I'm going to really think about what I saw in my journey, and I'm going to think about what I've talked about today in all of those various directions. And I'm happy to send you the worksheet that I did, as well as the talk, so that you can repeat it. And I'll probably redo that whistleblowing maybe, and redo the journey a little bit at the beginning, or not. because I have to amuse myself, and I'm not perfect. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we need to know that we are human and we do it, we fall down sometimes. I cough. I'm not perfect. I'm perfectly imperfect. And then when you're ready, and this is the big, I want everyone to hear this. When you are ready to move forward, then you will release this knot, and trust me, then you will move over. If you were facing north, you'll be facing east and moving over to the south and stuff like that. Or maybe you'll move and then you'll use this to empower the next move. But you'll know when. And if this work appeals to you, if you like, the soul searching, the type of energy work that the wind can bring, because you can talk to any of the wind people over in the Wind Clan who've taken the work. It is, no matter how much work you've done, this work will move you. It just does that. It has nothing. It has to do with the wind, bringing that wind energy into your life in a new way and recognizing it, and then life starts to change on the wind's terms, and it's really amazing work. And so I invite those of you who want to go deeper with us to the June 20th all day, and it's for beginners or for advanced people, because the wind meets you where you're at. Your magic carpet ride, if it's sailing down here, it will go up a notch. Trust me, it does. And I'm offering it to everybody who's listening today for $99. And where you can find it, I'll put the link in there. I haven't even created a page for it. It's in the store. So if you go over to practicalshaman.com, go over to the store. It's on special for today. And I hope that you join us, and that my assistants will be there to do breakout rooms and stuff like that. But it's going to be a really great day to empower yourself forward, because half of our year didn't go the way we thought it was going to go. So we can empower a new vision for the last 6 months of the year. And I'm really excited about what that could bring. So, I hope you got something from here. I look forward to reading the chat later. And I hope they've been answering questions from you. And I just want to say thank you all for joining us today. I'll stop the recording, and then if anyone wants to unmute themselves, you can.